the actual safety of the product.
Now, Dr. Rogers, after conducting your study, you made recommendations for how people could limit exposure to Truffaut, correct?
Absolutely. It is best that people can protect themselves from this substance in any way that they can until it can get taken off the market.
These recommendations included wearing long sleeves, correct?
That's one of them.
However, Lush Fertilizer already recommends wearing long sleeves when using their products. Isn't that right?
Well, I would hope that they at least did that after not truthfully telling people what the effects of exposure to their chemical were. It would be a bare minimum to tell them to at least try and protect themselves.
Dr. Rogers, you recommend people wear a mask when working with Truffaut, correct?
Once again, yes.
And Lush Fertilizer already has this recommendation. Isn't that right?
And it is the same with wearing long sleeves. I would hope that they do, because it would hopefully help minimize the risk of people dying from being exposed to their deadly substance.
Thank you, Dr. Rogers. No further questions.
Thank you. Any redirect?
Yes, Your Honor.
Whenever you're ready.
Dr. Rogers, you mentioned that the part of your study that's looking into the ways to mitigate exposure to Truffaut is inconclusive. What does this mean for the results of the study?
Well, being that it's inconclusive.
Objection. Your Honor, this question is outside of the scope of my cross.
Overruled. You may answer.
The results of the study do not exist because the study has not been completed, and therefore I can't really say whether or not the protective equipment would actually help people who are exposed to Truffaut, or whether it would literally not change anything in their risk of survival, risk of developing a cancer that would harm their likelihood of survival. So honestly, I can't say very much as to whether or not they will actually work because there's no data to prove it.
Thank you. No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you, counsel. Dr. Rogers, you may step down. Does the plaintiff have any further witnesses they wish to call at this time?
Yes, Your Honor. No. Oh, my apologies.
Yes, Your Honor. The plaintiff calls Carson Durst. Good afternoon, Ms. Durst.
Hold on. Do you want to change your call at the bottom? It says Casey Rogers.
Yes, Your Honor. Thank you, Your Honor.
Can you raise your right hand, please? Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you very much. Counsel, you may begin.
Good afternoon, Ms. Durst. Please introduce yourself to the jury.
My name is Carson Durst. That is spelled D-U-R-S-T.
Ms. Durst, what do you do for a living?
I am currently employed as the lead product developer for Terra's Greenery.
Before you worked at Terra's Greenery, did you hold any other jobs?
Yes, I was employed at Lush Fertilizer as their product development engineer.
Why do you no longer work at Lush Fertilizer?
When I was working at Lush, I did not believe that they appreciated my talents and all the hard work that I put into my research, and so I had to leave and go work for another company.
After you left Lush, what happened?
Lush Fertilizer fired me because I'd just been hired by Terra's Greenery, one of their biggest competitors, and Lush Fertilizer also took some legal action against me.
What kind of legal action did they take?
Lush Fertilizer sued me for breaching my non-compete agreement, and then Lush and I settled later, and I have been working at Terra's Greenery for the past 16 years.
Going back to your time at Lush, Ms. Durst, what kind of work did you do there?
My job was to research Truffaut on the research and development team for Lush.
We just heard Dr. Rogers testify as to what Truffaut is, but why was Truffaut so important to Lush?
Drufo gave Lush's fertilizer products a competitive edge on the market.
Specifically with Drufo, what did you do?
My job was to research one of the chemical compounds called nitrogen phosphorus carbonate, or better known to the scientific community as C3NO9P, in their first in-house study into Lush and Drufo.
In your research with this particular chemical, what did you find?
When I was researching, I found something actually really quite concerning, and I sort of focused on that a little bit more. And that was a study talking about the effects of Drufo and its chemical compound in rats.
Who conducted the study that you found?
It was done by the Mattis Bernard Cancer Research Center.
What is your understanding of how they conducted this study?
From what I read on the research paper, the researchers gave populations of both male and female rats different amounts of this chemical in their feed from 12 days of life to natural death. And then once these rats died, their remains were analyzed.
After reviewing this study, what did you learn?
I learned two things. One was that this chemical can cause cancer in rats, and exposure at a younger age or earlier can increase the chances of developing adverse health effects or cancer.
After learning this about this particular chemical compound, what did you do with your findings?
I documented my findings in my lab notebook on June 10, 2003, and my manager, Jerry Langley, reviewed my findings.
Ms. Durst, what other research into the safety of Drufo did Lush do?
I was also part of a second study into the possible carcinogenicity of Drufo in humans, and I got an email about this in September of 2003.
Ms. Durst, could you please refer to Exhibit 4?
Give me 1 minute to pull that up, please. Okay, I'm ready when you are, counsel.
Do you recognize this document?
I do.
What is it?
This was the email that my boss, Jerry Langley, sent me.
And is this a fair and accurate representation of the email as you received it from your boss?
Yes, this is an accurate copy of the email that I printed out.
Your Honor, at this time, the plaintiff moves to admit Exhibit 4 into evidence as its accuracy and authenticity have been shown.
Any objection?
Hearsay?
Response?
Your Honor, this exhibit is not hearsay pursuant to Rule 801D2, as it is a statement by a party opponent, that party opponent being Lush Fertilizer, who sent the email.
Overruled. She may answer, or it will be admitted, excuse me. What exhibit number is it again?
Exhibit 4, Your Honor.
Exhibit 4 shall be admitted.
Your Honor, at this time, may my co-counsel now publish this exhibit by screen sharing?
Certainly.
Your Honor, as it seems that there are some technical difficulties right now, may we request that time be stopped until the exhibit is screen shared?
There it goes.
all right. Ms. Durst, where is your name on the email recipient list?
My name, my first name, Carson, is on the last, is the last name of the first line, followed by, if you look to the second line, my last name is right there. So Carson Durst.
Is Blake Doncourt's name also on this list?
Blake Doncourt's name is right next to mine, right before the name John Smith.
Why was this email that you received so important?
This email was sent for three reasons. First was that Lush's had done previous studies into Drufo and found possible carcinogenic qualities, as well as second, Lush's first answer, their first study, was not the correct answer or the answer they wanted. And lastly, they were conducting a second study because the first study was inconclusive.
So in this second study that Lush decided to conduct, what were some of the findings that were presented?
The findings that were presented were that not only was non-Hodgkin's lymphoma related to Drufo and had carcinogens, there's also a link between the two.
Who was in the room when these findings of this particular study were presented?
along with my R&D team, Jerry Langley, my boss, was present, as well as Alex Monroe, another member of the team.
And were these two people high-ranking members of Lush?
Both members were from Lush's upper management team, correct?
After the conclusion of this study, did Lush prepare an official report?
Yes, they did.
Did this report make any mention of a measure that Lush could take to reduce the danger of their product?
Yes, Lush did put in a recommendation to bake Drufo to eliminate any possibility of it being carcinogenic.
Mr. What was your perception of this particular recommendation?
Lush made the recommendation, they put it in the report, but let's be honest, they were never going to follow it.
And Ms. Durst, was there any mention anywhere in the report of a possible link to non-Hodgkin's lymphoma?
In the report, the words non-Hodgkin's lymphoma were not mentioned, but in the meeting, I did learn of a connection between the two.
No further questions at this time, Your Honor.
Thank you, counsel. Any cross-examination?
Yes, Your Honor.
Whenever you're ready, counsel.
Good afternoon, Ms. Durst. My name is Mr. Billings, and I'll be asking you a few questions.
Good
If you could
afternoon.
please keep your answers to a yes or no, that would be ideal.
I will try the best I can.
Now, Ms. Durst, you knew Charlie Domcourt, correct?
I was best friends with him. We spent summers at his lake house. Soccer games were played together. We had Sunday dinners together. I would call him one of my best friends, but it's been a while since I've kept in touch with him, unfortunately.
Yes, and Charlie is Blake Domcourt's son, correct?
Yes, they are both related.
And Blake Domcourt is the CEO of Lush Fertilizer.
Yes, that is correct.
And that's the company that you had formerly worked at?
I was employed as an intern, and then I had another position there, but I had to leave and work somewhere else because because our relationship just wasn't working out between Lush and I, unfortunately.
Yes, you started as an intern, but after only 3 months, you were promoted to product development engineer. Isn't that true?
I started off in June of '03, was doing really great work on the team, and I was I was hired in September as a full-time employee. It was really a great opportunity that I was looking for.
Yes, and as your job as product development engineer, you worked with the product Drufo, correct?
I did, and I researched one of the chemical compounds in Drufo called nitrogen phosphorus carbonate.
Thank you. Now, Ms. Durst, you found a study regarding this compound, correct?
I did. It was a little concerning seeing the connection between the two and seeing that there was definitely a link between and that this chemical compound was carcinogenic in rats. And that just brought up questions about whether it was carcinogenic in humans. And so Lush did a second study, and we found some results from that.
Thank you. Now, you, after a while working with your job, you started to receive criticism from your coworkers. Isn't that true?
I know I was doing my best, but it seemed like my boss and my coworkers didn't believe that, didn't like that. And so my job performance records hurt, and I started getting assignments that I wanted, and it was just really hard. And then I decided that I had to leave.
Yes, your criticism was, your job was criticized by your employer, and then they made you sign a performance improvement plan, correct?
And the purpose of that plan was to get Lush and I into a better position, but unfortunately, that didn't really work out.
But yes, with this improvement plan, you went to go talk to Blake Domcourt, the CEO, about it. Isn't that true?
He was one of my mentors. He was nice enough to help me get this job, and so I thought that I could get some extra coaching and help from him, but unfortunately, that was not the case.
But didn't he tell you that you were lucky to even have a job?
Hearsay.
Hold on. What was your objection
Hearsay, Your Honor.
to the question that's being asked or the question that was asked
The question that is being asked right now, Your Honor.
right now? I'm going to let him finish his question. Ms. Durst, just hang on a second. Let him make the objection once the question is done.
Didn't Blake Domcourt tell you that you were lucky to even have a job, correct?
Objection, Your Honor, hearsay.
May I respond?
Response?
Your Honor, this is not hearsay, as it is not being offered for the truth of the matter, but rather for the effect on the listener.
Reply?
Your Honor, this statement is being offered for the truth of the matter asserted, as is being offered for what Blake Doncourt said to Ms. Durst and not what Ms. Durst did afterwards. There's been no foundation laid for that.
I'm going to sustain that objection.
Now, when you talked to Blake Doncourt, he told you he had overlooked qualified applicants from Ivy League schools.
Objection, Your Honor. Hearsay.
Response?
This is not being offered for the truth of the matter asserted, but rather for the effect on the listener at the time.
Reply?
Your Honor, there has been no foundation laid. Your Honor, there's been no foundation laid that this is being entered for the effect on a listener, as counsel has just asked Ms. Durst to testify, as this is what Blake Doncourt said for the truth of the matter asserted.
With the objection and that response, I'm going to sustain given the response that was made. Ask another question.
Now, Ms. Durst, in 2005, you received another abysmal performance review, correct?
My team had just come out with another study with results that Lush did not agree with, as they weren't the right answer for Lush at that time. And so that hurt my job performance, and that hurt my credibility. And so I did receive a bad performance review. Yes.
Yes, so you went to go talk to Blake Doncourt again, correct?
Again, I was not getting anywhere with Jerry Langley, who I thought would help me, as she was my boss. And so I went to I went to Blake, since he was my mentor, and I was hoping for some
Yes.
advice.
And Blake, yes, and Blake told you to work out whatever problems you were having with Jerry on your own.
Objection, Your Honor. Hearsay.
Response?
Your Honor, this is regarding the party opponent.
Overruled. She may answer.
Counsel, can you please ask the question again? I didn't hear it.
Blake told you to work out whatever problem you were having with Jerry on your own, correct?
That was his response to me.
Now, you left his office disheartened.
You could say I was hurt. I was hurt by someone who I thought would give me coaching and give me support, and who would want to make me a better employee. But unfortunately, that's not what he had in mind.
Yes, in fact, you were seething when you left, correct?
I think in the moment you could say that, but once I calmed down and realized that this was not the right reaction to have at the time, since I was a new employee,
You were also confused. Isn't that true?
I didn't understand why he wasn't going to help me. I came to him because he was my mentor. I came to him because I was hoping for some support and help, but I didn't receive any of that, unfortunately.
And you felt betrayed by somebody who had called you family, correct?
He was a family friend. He was my mentor, better said, in the company. And so I was upset and I was hurt that I wasn't going to get some help from him. And that was all I wanted. I was fresh out of college. This was my first job. And he left me with nothing. And so I just didn't know what to do.
So you found that you thought that you would have no future with Lush, correct?
That's when I realized, that was one of the defining moments of when I realized that this company was not going to be the best fit for me, unfortunately, as I had thought 2 years ago. And I went to go look for a new job. Yes.
Yes, and you found a new job at Tara's Greenery, correct?
I loved my job at Lush. I loved working with fertilizer. And when I looked on the job market, Tara's Greenery had some openings. And so I thought, what better than to apply and see if this was the opportunity for me.
Yes, and Tara's Greenery, you thought working there would get Blake's goat, correct?
In the moment, right when I left his office and when I'd been really upset, I had that thought. But as soon as I left his office and was like, wow, that was not the right reaction to have, I was like, that. So just in the moment, but that was not the defining moment at all.
Yes, and Lush fired you because you were hired by Tara's Greenery.
I had just been hired by Tara's and I had not had enough time to give my resignation yet. So that did happen.
Now you work at Tara's Greenery, and when you started there, you worked on a new product, correct?
My team and I did, yes.
Yes, and you expect this product to overtake Lush in the market?
I want my product to do well, and I know that my product is not carcinogenic, is not harmful to anybody, and so I am proud of it.
And in order to take Lush in the market, you have to do two things, correct?
I'm sorry.
Objection, Your Honor. Big.
Just reword your question.
Ms. Dirks, in order to overtake Lush in the market, you have to do two specific things. One, either sell more, or two, sell less.
Objection, Your Honor. Compound.
Overruled. She may answer.
Counsel, can you please rephrase the question? I don't quite understand.
Yes, in order to overtake Lush in the market, either Terrace Greenery needs to sell more product or Lush needs to sell less miraculously.
I wouldn't say miraculously, and that is, yes, how the business world works.
Thank you. No further questions.
Thank you, counsel. Any redirect?
Yes, Your Honor.
Never you
Ms.
ready.
Durst. Ms. Durst, do you still hold any animosity towards Blake Downcourt?
I am very appreciative of Blake for giving me my first job and giving me some really great work and life experiences, but I hold no hard feelings or animosity toward him, and I am really looking forward to my products at Terra's doing their best, and I also hope that Lush's products do equally as well or better.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you. Ms. Dirks, you may step down.
Thank you.
Does the plaintiff wish to call another witness?
Yes, Your Honor. The plaintiff calls Dakota Weirs.
All right, Mr. Weirs, if you could go ahead and change the tagline down at the bottom there. Thank you, Mr. Weirs. Can you raise your right hand, please, sir? Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you very much, sir. Counsel, whenever you're ready.
Good afternoon, Mr. Weirs. My name is Feliciana Sayers. Please introduce yourself to the jury.
Good afternoon. My name is Dakota Weirs. I spelled Weirs.
Mr. Weirs, what do you do?
Oh, the truth is, I currently don't do much, and that's because I can't do much because of my illness.
What kind of illness?
Recently, I was diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, a cancer.
What did you do before you were diagnosed with cancer?
Before I had cancer, I truly felt alive. I was an active member in my community. I volunteered at the local homeless shelter, got good grades, and one of the biggest aspects I enjoyed the most was playing piano.
Why did you enjoy playing the piano so much?
Whenever I played the piano, I could just go into my own world and let the music take me wherever it took me. And one of the most important things about piano was the connection it built between me and my grandpa, who sadly passed away.
Mr. Weirs, I'm sorry to hear about the loss of your grandfather. Were you any good at playing the piano?
Well, after some time and the inspiration my grandpa brought me, I got quite good at it, yeah.
Did anything come from your skill?
Yeah, I got accepted into my dream school, Juilliard. I got a full ride scholarship. My grandpa would have been so proud of me.
Did you end up attending Juilliard?
No, I didn't. And that's because around the time I was going to leave for college, I started developing some symptoms. I was losing weight rapidly, and I was constantly tired all the time. I had no idea what was wrong with me.
What did you do?
I went from doctor to doctor, just trying to figure out what was wrong with me. And eventually, one diagnosed me with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
What kind of symptoms do you experience with non-Hodgkin lymphoma?
After my treatment, I'm still have swollen lymph nodes. I have sharp chest pains and I can't even sit in places for a long amount of time without bruising, and I'm always tired.
How has this impacted your life?
Oh, all I do is sleep or lay on my couch and watch TV now. I can't even play the simplest of songs on my piano. And most of all, my dreams have been ruined. I'll never be able to go to my dream school in this condition.
Speaking of non-Hodgkin lymphoma, have you ever been in contact with Drufo?
Yes, I have. Back when I worked at Havens.
What's Havens?
When I was 14, I needed a job for college, to build money for college, which I realized was pointless now. And I decided to work at Havens Landscaping.
Circling back to Drufo, what do you know about Drufo?
One day I was laying on my couch watching TV, as I always do now, and a news story about Drufo and its effects came on.
And what did you learn?
Well, the story talked about how the dangers of Drufo and how it's the main product, the main chemical in Lush fertilizer, and how it's linked to my cancer.
Have you ever used Lush fertilizer?
I used Lush all the time back when I worked at Havens.
Were you instructed to follow any safety measures while working with the fertilizer?
Yeah, the boss always told us to wear a mask and protect our skin, but I mean, the adults never did. I just followed what they did.
Going back to the news story you saw, why was it important?
Well, this news story, it linked Drufo to my cancer, and it showed how dangerous it was.
What did you do after you saw the news story?
I immediately warned my ex-boss about the dangers of Drufo.
Did anything else happen?
Yeah, I also asked him.
Your Honor, vague.
Response?
Your Honor, I'm asking if anything happened after he contacted his boss.
Overruled. He may answer.
Yeah, after I contacted my boss, I also asked him to send me a picture of the label on the Lush products.
And did he?
He did, yes.
Mr. Weirs, you should have Exhibit 1 in front of you.
All right.
What is Exhibit 1?
This is a picture of the label that he sent me.
Is this an accurate copy of the label as you saw it?
Yes, it is.
Has it been altered in any way?
No.
Your Honor, at this time, we request that Exhibit 1 be admitted into evidence for its accuracy and authenticity have been shown.
Any objection?
Yes, Your Honor, on hearsay.
Response?
Your Honor, pursuant to Rule 801D2, this is a statement by the party opponent, Lush Fertilizer.
Is this document from Lush Fertilizer?
It is Lush Fertilizer's label on their fertilizer product.
All right. Overruled. Exhibit 1, is it?
Yes.
Shall be admitted.
Permission to publish to the jury.
Certainly.
Mr. Weirs, what stood out to you about this label?
Well, if you look at the label, you can see there's no actual warning. And the most dangerous thing it says is an eye irritation or skin irritation, not cancer.
Did anything else stand out to you?
Yeah, when I looked at under the active ingredients, it says Drufo. And I did a little more research and realized that Drufo wasn't in all Lush fertilizers.
What do you mean Drufo isn't in all Lush fertilizers?
Oh, specifically in France, I realized that Drufo isn't in the ingredients list. It's actually banned in the entire European Union.
Why is it banned in the European Union?
I don't know why.
Objection, Your Honor, relevance.
Your Honor, this is highly relevant. It is our job to prove, as the plaintiff, our burden of proof is proving Lush was negligent. Mr. Weirs is simply
My
Testify.
apologies, Ms. Sayers.
Mr. Weirs is simply testifying as to his knowledge and research of Drufo.
Reply.
Yes, Your Honor. What the witness is discussing is the product outside of America. The product on trial here today that has to be proven is not that product. Therefore, that holds no permanence to this case.
I'm going to overrule the relevancy objection.
Mr. Weirs, why is it banned in the European Union?
I don't know why. I'm not a scientist. I just have the cancer.
Mr. Weirs, let's talk about Skylar Weirs.
Okay.
Who is Skylar Weirs?
He's my twin brother.
Did Mr. Weirs work at Haven's Landscape with you?
Skylar and I, we did everything together, but he's allergic to grass, so no, he didn't.
To your knowledge, does Mr. Weirs have non-Hodgkin lymphoma?
No, he doesn't.
To your knowledge, does Mr. Weirs have any form of cancer?
No, not at all.
Are you and your brother still close?
Unfortunately, Skylar, I feel that Skylar resents me now because all of our dad's money is going to my treatment and not to him.
Finally, Mr. Weirs, why are you here today?
Look, this cancer has truly ruined my life. And when I look back at before I had cancer, I would think about how I tutored kids at National Honor Society, and I always hated it. But now I realize how grateful I should have been for even being able to move and tutor the kids. I would do anything to go back to the life that I had. And I realize I never will. And I know that no amount of money can make up for what I lost, but Lush needs to be held accountable for what they did to me.
Thank you, Mr. Weirs. Your Honor, I have no further questions at this time.
Thank you. Any cross-examination?
Yes, Your Honor.
you're
Before I
ready.
proceed, may I get a brief time check?
You have 3 minutes and 12 seconds remaining.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. Weirs. My name's Caroline Dieter, and I'm going to be asking you some questions today. If you could keep your answers to a simple yes or no, that would be ideal. Let's begin.
I'll try my best.
Thank you. So you're currently 20 years old, right?
Yes, I am.
And it was pretty recently that you received your diagnosis, wasn't it?
The diagnosis was recent, although it felt like I've had this cancer for forever. I mean, these symptoms have been with me for a long time.
And your illness, it's environmental, not genetic, right?
Yes.
And for this illness to occur, it usually requires some sort of exposure to certain chemicals, right?
I'm not
Objection,
trying.
Your Honor. Improper lay witness opinion. Mr. Weirs does not have any scientific or technical knowledge.
May I
Response?
respond?
Yes.
Your Honor, it's reasonable to believe that the witness would have a general understanding of how his illness develops, especially with the question of today's case.
Response,
Reply.
Your Honor. Your Honor, knowing how and knowing about general knowledge about non-Hodgkin lymphoma, Mr. Weirs may have, but specific scientific and technical knowledge is not something he has, and he's not tendered as an expert in non-Hodgkin lymphoma.
Mr. Weirs may answer if he knows, understanding that may open the door to further questions.
Would you like me to re-ask that, Mr. Weirs?
Yes, please.
For this illness to occur, it usually requires exposure to certain chemicals, right?
I'm not a scientist, but from what my doctors have been saying and the experts I've been working with, I think so, yes.
I'd like to talk about the circumstances of your exposure. At age 14, you worked at Haven Landscaping, right?
I did, yes.
And it was there that you encountered Lush's product, wasn't it?
Yes, it is.
But that was far from the only product you used, correct?
Oh, I couldn't work with any of the other big machinery. So yeah, I worked with fertilizers and yes.
Yeah, it was just one among the many other fertilizers and lawn chemicals used at your job, right?
Oh, I mean, we had a few fertilizers. I don't know exactly how many, but yeah, Lush was one of them.
And these different products all had some sort of level of instruction that users were supposed to adhere to for their own safety, didn't they?
I don't know. I didn't look at every bottle.
Is it your testimony here today that these products didn't all have some sort of instruction on how to use them?
I mean, if I had to assume, yeah, I guess they did.
So then it isn't your testimony?
My testimony is that, yeah, if I had to assume all these bottles did have instructions on the back on how to use them.
And you were fully aware of those instructions, weren't you?
Not exactly of every single fertilizer I worked with. I mean, the boss always told us some of the instructions on the fertilizer.
Yes, the boss did tell you. He told you that you were to always wear long sleeves, correct?
That's correct. And on some days,
Pants,
yes, I didn't show up to
gloves,
my underwear. Yes.
gloves,
Yes.
and a proper face mask when working with these chemicals.
He always told us to wear a face mask, but he never actually provided them. I mean, this was before COVID. I didn't have any face masks readily available.
You chose not to follow these instructions, did you?
Look, I just did what the adults did. I mean, if I showed up at work looking like that, I mean, I would have been made fun of. And of course, I would have followed the instructions. If
You would have been made fun of when it was company
Ms.
policy?
Dieters, you're out of time.
Thank you very much.
That's all right,
Council.
Your Honor. No further questions.
Any redirect?
Yes, Your Honor.
Whenever you're ready.
Mr. Weirs, why didn't you continue to follow the recommendations made by your boss?
the other adults did. And if it said that it would have given me cancer, of course, I would have followed the instructions and I probably wouldn't have worked with this fertilizer at all.
What was the main fertilizer you worked with?
Lush.
Is there anything on the Lush label that warns of the potential dangers of their product?
I mean, like I said, all it said was an eye irritation or skin irritation, not that it would ruin my life.
Thank you, Mr. Weirs. Your Honor, I have no further questions.
Thank you, counsel. Mr. Weirs, you may step down. Does the plaintiff have any further witnesses they wish to call at this time?
No, Your Honor, the plaintiff rests.
Thank you. Does the defense have any witnesses they wish to call?
Yes, Your Honor. The defense would like to call Blake Doncourt to the stand.
Mr. Doncourt, can you please raise your right hand? Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do, Your Honor.
Thank you very much. Counsel, whenever you're ready.
Good afternoon, Mr. Doncourt. Would you please state your name and spell your last for the record?
My name is Blake Doncourt, D-O-N-C-O-U-R-T-T.
Thank you, Mr. Doncourt. Could you please tell us your connection to today's case?
Well, I'm the CEO of Lush.
Tell us a little bit about your history with Lush.
Well, I built the company to where it is today 20 years ago. I'm really happy what I've been able to do for my employees, my consumers, and the planet.
You say, and the planet. Are there any values about the planet and taking care of it that you would consider to be at the heart of Lush?
Certainly. One of the big problems in the fertilizer business is excessive nitrogen buildups and nitrogen eutrophication in the water. So at Lush, we really care about not having that be a problem of ours and making sure we leave the planet better. So we donate 10% of our profits to charities that actually help clean up nitrogen buildups. And we also lobby for environmental education as well.
Have you ever been commended on an official basis for your efforts?
Yes, I was commended in 2020 by the UN Champions of the Earth Award. I got nominated for it, and I was really hoping to win it in 2021, but then unfortunately this all happened.
These are all great accomplishments. I have to ask, what went wrong? Why are you on trial here today?
Well, unfortunately, we've been falsely accused of knowingly putting out a product that was carcinogenic, and I'm just here to explain that that is not true at all.
And where is this supposed carcinogen found?
The plaintiff is alleging that it was found in Drupa.
And is that true?
No.
How do you know that?
Well, we make sure we run multiple tests on our products to make sure it is safe. And we don't just do that ourselves. The EPA also regulates the fertilizer business, and they do many of their own tests. That is the Environmental Protection Agency.
Now, Mr. Doncourt, with these findings, did you see it fit to put a warning on your product?
Certainly, as with any spray fertilizer, you don't want to breathe it in. I mean, humans are only supposed to breathe in the air. So it's just common sense within the industry to wear a N95 mask and to have long clothing on. And we did have a recommendation label on the product to do that.
Now, Mr. Doncourt, keeping in the topic of safety, are you aware of any benefits that could come from baking a product such as yours?
Well, if a product is carcinogenic, you would want to bake it to prevent it from being carcinogenic. But seeing as this product wasn't carcinogenic according to our research and the EPA's, there was no need to bake it at all.
Did you investigate the finances of baking before you had run your safety studies?
Of course, with any potential expense, it's responsible to see how would it affect our finances. So I did do that, and I even created a table back then.
Your Honor, I'm constructively showing opposing counsel what's been previously marked as Exhibit 8. Mr. Doncourt, do you have Exhibit 8 in front of you?
I do.
Do you recognize this exhibit?
Yes.
And what is it?
It's the amortization table that I made in 2004.
Is it a regular part of your job to create tables forecasting profits for Lush?
Yes.
And is this an accurate representation of the table as you knew it?
Yes.
Your Honor, at this time, the defense moves to enter Exhibit 8 into evidence as its accuracy and authenticity have been shown.
Any objection?
No objection, Your Honor.
Exhibit 8 shall be admitted.
May my co-counsel please publish to the jury?
Certainly.
Thank you. Mr. Doncourt, according to this chart, would Lush still be profitable had you had to bake?
Certainly. If you look at the net profits compared to the profit before baking, it's really not that big of a difference. And same with the estimated net profit change. We're talking single digit profit changes. So I'm still making a lot of money off this product, even without baking it. I'm sorry, even with baking it.
And finally, Mr. Doncourt, why didn't you bake your product?
It was an unnecessary expense. Our product was already found to be safe for the consumer, and as long as you take the proper precautions, that this product is completely safe.
Thank you. Co-counsel, you can remove the exhibit. You can set that aside, Mr. Doncourt. I'd like to talk a little bit about Carson Durst. Do you know Carson Durst?
Yes, he's a family friend. He played soccer with my son, Charles. We take him to our lake house a lot. He'd have dinner with us every Saturday. He's family to me. And he was an employee at Lush as well.
Do you know what Ms. Durst's connection to today's case is?
Yes, unfortunately, she's testifying against us with the plaintiff.
And being that you were her employer, do you feel that she has sufficient knowledge to be making claims such as this?
She didn't work in our toxicology and safety labs. She was with research and development. She manufactured an email, unfortunately. So no, she did not have any knowledge of anything that could even make such an accusation.
I'm sorry, you said she manufactured an email? Can
That
you
is true.
tell me how you know that it was manufactured?
Well, we gave our email servers over to the plaintiff's lawyers, and they could not even find the email that she showed.
I see. Finally, Mr. Doncourt, I'd like to discuss the situation that Dakota Weirs is currently going through. Could you please tell the jury a little bit about how you feel regarding his situation?
I feel horrible for Dakota. I really do. Non-Hodgkin's lymphoma is a terrible disease. I really hope he can play piano again, attend Juilliard. I really do. And I hope he finds justice. But what I need to make clear here today is that Lush was not responsible for that. We would never put out a product that's carcinogenic like that. That goes against me and who we are as a company.
Finally, you have a general knowledge in business being a CEO.
Yes, I do.
Objection, Your Honor. Leading.
I can rephrase, Your Honor.
Go ahead.
Do you have general knowledge being a CEO?
Yes, 20 years of being the CEO of Lush Fertilizer has given me some business knowledge.
And based on that business knowledge, is it good business to knowingly put out a product that you know is carcinogenic?
No, besides going against my own morals and the company's values, we wouldn't want to kill off our consumer base, and we'd be facing lawsuits like this every day if we did that. And it wouldn't even make it to the market in the first place with the EPA regulations.
I see. Thank you, Mr. Doncourt. No further questions.
Thank you, counsel. Any cross-examination?
Yes, Your Honor.
Whenever you're ready, counsel.
Good afternoon, Mr. Doncourt. My name is Arapahoe. You are the Chief Executive Officer of Lush Fertilizer,
Yes, I am.
and you have grown this company into one of the world's largest suppliers of fertilizer.
Yes.
And you are proud of your company's success, aren't you?
Yes, I
Objection,
really
Your
am.
Honor. Relevance.
Response?
Your Honor, as the plaintiff, it is our burden to prove that Lush Fertilizer is liable of negligence of their product, Lush Fertilizer. And part of this is, and on direct, Mr. Doncourt testified as to his opinion of what his company was doing. These questions about his opinion of his own company are relevant because these opinions are highly relevant as they go to show the potential bias that Mr. Doncourt has in the large stake that he holds in this company, which is under threat today.
May I respond?
Yes.
As it's already been shown through Exhibit 8, there is no bias. So I fail to see, with that being said, that there's any relevance.
Overruled. You may answer.
Mr. Doncourt, you are proud of your company's success, aren't you?
Yes, as I said, what I've been able to do for the environment, the consumers, and for the planet, yes, I am happy.
You have worked night and day to build this company into what it has become, right?
Yes, it was a lot of hard work for me and my employees to get where we are today. It's true.
But your company, Mr. Doncourt, is now being threatened by a lawsuit.
Yes, that's what I'm hearing in court for today.
And this is a lawsuit that could cost your company lots of money, couldn't it?
It could potentially. I'm telling the truth here. We didn't put out a product that was carcinogenic.
Mr. Doncourt, if your company loses this lawsuit, it will cost your company lots of money. Isn't that correct?
Yeah, that's how a lawsuit with the plaintiff when it would work.
Yeah. And this lawsuit could also cost your company its reputation, couldn't it?
Certainly.
This lawsuit could significantly damage the company that you worked so hard until today to build.
Yes, if the plaintiff won, which I don't think it will, it would hurt us.
It would significantly damage your company, wouldn't it?
Yes, it would.
Let's talk a little bit about Drufo now. Drufo is a chemical within your fertilizer product.
Yes, the chemical Drufo is what actually helps it be so great for the consumer and for the planet. It helps stay onto the.
Mr. Doncourt, It is a part of your product that is very important, isn't it?
Yes,
As only Lush Fertilizer has access to it.
yes,
And it is a chemical which some people have alleged to be carcinogenic.
yes. It's been falsely alleged that it's carcinogenic solely by Dr. Casey Rogers.
Specifically alleged to be carcinogenic with regards to non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, right?
Yes,
And it is your understanding that non-Hodgkin's lymphoma is a disease that is not genetic.
yeah. I'm no doctor, but from my understanding, it's caused by environmental factors.
Exactly. It's caused by environmental factors such as fertilizers.
Yes, that could be an environmental factor that could cause it potentially. And in
And
Dakota's
because of
case, he was
this,
working at multiple fertilizers.
Mr. Duncourt, and because of this, there are measures such as baking fertilizer that fertilizer companies can take to make sure that their product is safe.
Certainly, in industry, if a company has a product that's completely carcinogenic, they'll typically bake it.
Because baking the fertilizer is a measure that would eliminate the risk of the product being carcinogenic.
Yes, that would eliminate any risk, the risk of a product being carcinogenic. If something's going to cause cancer, what someone would do is bake it.
And your company did not bake your fertilizer.
Because as I said, we found that it wasn't carcinogenic.
Mr.
The
Doncourt.
EPA found it.
Mr. Doncourt, your company did not bake your fertilizer. Isn't that correct?
Yes, that's correct. We didn't bake it. It was an unnecessary expense, as I established earlier.
Also, by not baking your fertilizer, you were able to increase profits by 6% the initial year, right?
It was 7%, I believe.
Mr. Doncourt, is your testimony today that you would increase profits by 7% the initial year?
Yes, it's in the amortization table.
Mr. Doncourt, in your statement, it is 6%.
I'm sorry, I was thinking about the amortization table. My apologies about that. But yes.
And each additional year thereafter, profits increased by 2%.
Yes, that's accurate.
And your company decided not to bake the fertilizer because it was too costly.
It was, as I said, it was an unnecessary expense. We
Because
didn't have a need to do that. The EPA found that it wasn't dangerous.
Mr. Doncourt,
So did us.
Mr. Doncourt, your company, in your own words, found it too costly to bake the fertilizer.
If you feel that's the proper way to word it, then sure.
It was too costly for your company to take this measure that would eliminate any risk of your product being carcinogenic.
Objection, Your Honor, asked and answered.
Response?
Your Honor, I have not yet asked this question with this specific details of the baking completely eliminating the risk of carcinogenicity.
May I respond, Your Honor?
Yes.
Council has already established both of these questions individually, meaning that both of them have been asked and answered.
Sustained, move on.
Mr. Doncourt, you said on direct that it's bad for business to have the public know that your product is carcinogenic.
I said it. Yes, if your product was carcinogenic, that would be bad for business, obviously.
It's bad for business because people wouldn't want to have a product that's carcinogenic, right?
Yeah, no one would want to use a product that causes cancer.
So it's important for our company to take the measures so the public does not think that their product is carcinogenic. Isn't that correct?
Absolutely, and that's what we've done here at Lush.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you, Counsel. Any redirect?
No, Your Honor, no redirect.
Thank you, Counsel. Mr. Doncourt, you can step down. Does the defense wish to call any other witnesses at this time?
Yes, Your Honor. The defense calls Skylar Weirs to the stand.
Mr. Weirs, can you please raise your right hand?
Yes,
You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you, sir. Counsel, you may begin when ready.
Good afternoon, Mr. Weirs. Could you please introduce yourself for the court?
Yes, my name is Skylar Weirs. That's Weirs.
Weers, are you in any way related to Dakota Weers in this case?
Yes, he's my twin.
Now, Mr. Weers, what is your job?
I am an investigative reporter.
Where do you work?
I work at the Rationalist magazine.
And what is the Rationalist magazine?
We are a scientific journal that promotes science education and facts.
What topics do you cover at the Rationalist?
We usually cover topics that are highly politicized and gather a lot of misinformation in the media.
What topics do you specifically cover?
Specifically, I cover agritech or agricultural technology.
What is agritech?
Agritech can be anything from fertilizers, high-tech greenhouses, things of the sort.
And how did you go about your research on this topic?
Well, for a year, I have researched and read extensively on dozens of publications made by dozens of agritech companies, their own studies, even studies created by the USDA and NASDA.
And is there anything in particular that you did when reviewing these studies?
Yes, so under every article, there are footnotes of where they got their facts, their information, their sources. And so not only did I go into their articles, I went into their sources.
Your Honor, at this time, we move to enter Skylar Weers as an expert in the field of modern agritech.
Any objection?
Oh dear, Your Honor.
You may.
Mr. Weers, you have no formal education after high school.
No formal education, but I have self-educated myself.
You have no formal training in the field of agritech.
No, I do not.
You have no work experience in the field of agritech.
No.
Your Honor, we renew our objection to Mr. Weers being allowed to testify as an expert in the field of modern agritech and request you to reconsider your earlier ruling on the issue. Given Mr. Weers' lack of education and work experience, his mere review of literature does not make him competent and is insufficient to allow him to provide testimony and reach conclusions on that opinion from that research. Additionally, his testimony will not assist the jury in understanding the evidence or a fact at issue.
Response.
Your Honor, while Mr. Weers has no formal education, he has self-education that he gained through his extensive research of articles from agritech companies, the USDA, the NASDA, and he has knowledge and specialized knowledge from this extensive research, and therefore he meets the requirements under Rule 702.
Pursuant to the court's pretrial ruling in the problem, the court will find that the witness is qualified as an expert as stated.
Thank you, Your Honor. Now, Mr. Weers, you mentioned you researched fertilizers as a part of agritech. Can you tell us a little bit about this?
Well, I can go into specifics of fertilizers, what ingredients do what, but I'll put it simply, fertilizers help plants grow.
And how do they do this?
They do this with the help of several common chemicals, arsenic, glyphosates, nitrates.
Are any of these chemicals dangerous?
Yes, arsenic is a known carcinogen, and glyphosates have been qualified for as a carcinogen, and nitrates have a number of problems.
Besides having harmful effects on humans, do these ingredients affect the environment in any way?
Yes, nitrates in excess can run off into bodies of water and create dead zones.
Now, are any companies working to change the status quo in fertilizers?
Yes, Lush Fertilizer.
And how are they going about this?
With their American product, Drufo.
What is Drufo?
Drufo is a very good bonding agent and a pesticide and a fertilizer.
And is this a relatively new product?
Yes, it is relatively new.
Is this a revolutionary product?
Yes, I would say so. Yes.
Because of the new and revolutionary nature of this product, product. Are there any concerns surrounding it?
Yes, with every modern advancement in technology, there will always be certain misinformation and hesitance from the public, and Drufa has gathered a lot of that.
What are some of these concerns?
Some of these concerns are that Drufa causes non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
And is there any evidence to support this?
No.
Now, Mr. Weirs, circling back, let's talk a little bit about your personal life. Is it hard to support yourself as a journalist?
Well, yes, I don't make a lot of money as a journalist, so I had to take on a part-time job.
Have you ever struggled financially in the past?
Yes, admittedly, I was a bit of a sports gambler, but that's behind me and it was a terrible mistake.
And has anyone helped you out with your struggles?
Yes, my mother did when she was alive, but sadly she passed. And after that, my father cut me off.
Are you in any way financially connected to your family?
Yes, as far as I know, my father hasn't cut me out of the will yet.
Objection, Your Honor. Pursuant to Rule 401, relevance.
Response?
Your Honor, this is relevant as I'm establishing the fact that this witness has no financial bias.
Response, Your Honor.
Why?
Your Honor, Mr. Weirs' ties to his family through his financial ties to his family are not relevant as to whether or not Lush was negligent in labeling Drufo and creating Drufo.
Overruled. He may answer.
Could you repeat the question?
Yes, of course. Mr. Weirs, are you in any way financially connected to your family?
Oh, yes. As far as I know, my father hasn't cut me out of the will just yet. So.
And how would the outcome of this case affect you financially?
Well, my father is shouldering the cost of this lawsuit and also paying for my brother's medical bills. So if my brother were to win this case, my father would have more money to leave to me if something terrible were to happen to him.
Now, Mr. Weirs, did you come to an expert opinion in this case?
Yes, I did.
What is that opinion?
Drufo did not cause my brother's non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
And before we end, is there anything you would like to say to your brother?
Yes. Dakota, I love you very much, but you're going after the wrong people. And when you do, I want to be there 100% of the way.
Thank you. No further questions.
Cross-examination?
Yes, Your Honor.
Whenever you're ready.
Mr. Weirs, let's talk about your research. You authored one publication questioning the narrative that there's a causal link between Drufo and cancer.
Yes.
You doubt that anyone has the same overall knowledge of modern agritech that you have.
Yes, I doubt anyone has the, outside of the USDA and NASDA, I do believe I have the most overall perspective on modern agritech.
And despite your overall perspective, you are unaware of any study that establishes a causal link between Drufo and cancer.
I'm not aware of any credible study that provides a causal link between Drufo and cancer.
Mr. Weirs, you conducted extensive research into modern agritech?
Yes, I did.
And despite your extensive research, you are unaware of the Mattis Bernard Cancer Research Center's study on the effects of the ingredient in Drufo, C3N09P, causing cancer in rats.
Again, I'm not aware of any credible study. I believe that study is incredible because of rats are very different to human beings. And
Mr. Weirs, you are unaware of this study.
No, I am aware of it. Again, I just don't believe it's credible.
Mr. Weirs, because you don't believe the study that establishes a causal link between rats and Drufo is credible, it did not factor into your opinion.
Correct, because I don't think it's credible.
Mr. Weirs, you work for the Rationalist magazine?
Yes, I do.
The Rationalist magazine is devoted to preventing the spread of pseudoscience, superstitions, and irrational beliefs.
Yes.
You on many occasions have challenged the major players in agriculture.
Yes.
You have lost out on many potential job opportunities because of your opinions.
Yes, they're not very popular.
But now your work is generating income.
My career in journalism has been taking off quite a bit, but I'm not making that much money, no.
But it is generating income.
Relatively, yes.
Mr. Weirs, you are here today testifying for Lush Fertilizer.
Yes, I am.
You are aware that Lush Fertilizer is a major player in agriculture.
Yes, but I'm here because
Yes, Mr. Weirs. You have stated your support of Monsanto.
Yes.
Objection, Your Honor, relevance.
Reply.
Your Honor, this is highly relevant. It is our burden of proof to prove Lush was negligent. Lush has called Mr. Weirs to testify as an expert in the field of agritech and prove they were not negligent. If allowed to testify, we expect Mr. Weirs to say that yes, he does support Monsanto. This goes to show that Mr. Weirs does support the major players in agriculture and has changed his opinion just to generate more profits.
Reply.
Your Honor, Mr. Weirs' opinions on other agritech companies is not relevant to whether or not Drufo caused his brother's non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, and therefore it's not relevant.
Overruled. You may answer.
Could you repeat the question?
Mr. Weirs, you have stated your support of Monsanto.
I've stated my support of Monsanto's product for soybean GMOs.
Yes, Mr. Weirs. And you are aware that Monsanto is a major player in agriculture.
Yes, I support their product, not the entire company.
But nevertheless, they are still a major player in agriculture.
Yes.
Mr. Weirs, every chemical fertilizer contains several well-known carcinogens.
Yes. But Lush Fertilizer doesn't.
Including nitrates.
Yes.
You believe that no chemical fertilizer will ever truly be safe.
Yes, but that doesn't mean that we can't make them as safe as they can be.
But they will never truly be safe.
Yes.
Lush, being a pesticide, it is poison.
Yes.
Your Honor, I have no further questions at this time.
Thank you, counsel. Any redirect?
Yes, Your Honor.
Whenever you're ready.
Mr. Weirs, does the fact that you support certain products of agritech companies mean that you support all major players in the agritech business?
No, it does not.
Thank you. No further questions.
Thank you, counsel. Mr. Weirs, you may step down. Does the defense have any other witnesses they wish to call at this time?
Yes, Your Honor. The defense calls to the stand Dr. Devin Williams. Also, may I please have a brief time check?
11 minutes and 2 seconds remaining.
Thank you.
Dr. Williams, can you please raise your right hand? Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you very much, sir. Counsel, you can begin when you're ready.
Good afternoon, Dr. Williams. May you please state your name and spell your last for the record?
Yes, my name is Dr. Devin Williams. That's spelled Williams.
Now, Dr. Williams, what is your educational background?
I received my Bachelor's of Science at Colorado State University in toxicology, my Master's of Science in forensic toxicology, also at CSU, and my PhD again at CSU in pharmacology and toxicology. In addition to my education through PhD, I completed a post-PhD program at the University of Utah in pharmacology, pharma toxicology.
Thank you. And what is your current employment?
Currently, my main source of employment is at Lush Fertilizer as their lead of toxicology research and development.
In addition to that, at Lush, I am the current outgoing ethics committee chair there.
I'm sorry. Did somebody say something?
Yeah, objection, Your Honor.
What's your objection?
Narrative.
Overruled. You can finish.
I'll pick up where I stopped. So I am the current outgoing ethics committee chair at Lush Fertilizer. And in addition to my work at Lush Fertilizer, I am a tenured assistant professor at the University of New Mexico and a visiting professor at Colorado State University.
Thank you. Now, do you have any previous work experience?
Yes, I was previously a professor at CU Anschutz Medical Campus, and I was also a employee at the Office of the Chief Medical Examiner at in Larimer County.
Now, what did you do at the Office of the Chief Medical Examiner in Larimer County?
I analyzed samples of autopsies to see if drugs or toxic chemicals played a role in their deaths, and if they did, to what extent.
Now, Dr. Williams, you mentioned you were the lead toxicology researcher at Lush. What does it mean to be the lead toxicology researcher?
Well, I'll start with the first part of your question, what it means to be a research toxicologist. That means I look at biological systems and potentially toxic chemicals, and I see if they are toxic and how toxic they are and how to mitigate that toxicity. What it means to be the lead toxicologist at Lush, that just means I'm in charge of the labs there.
Thank you. Now, in your work at Lush, have you worked with their product Drufo?
Yes, for pretty effectively my entire employment, so around 12 years.
Thank you. Now, do you hold any certifications in toxicology?
Yes, I hold several certifications in toxicology. They're being in the states of Colorado, New Mexico, Wyoming, and Utah.
Thank you. Your Honor, at this time, the defense tenders Dr. Devin Williams as an expert in the fields of toxicology and Drufo.
Any objection?
No objection, Your Honor.
You shall be so qualified.
Dr. Williams, what exactly is Drufo?
Drufo is a bonding agent that Lush puts in some of their products.
What's a bonding agent?
Well, to put it simply, it just keeps two things together. In the case of Drufo, it keeps the fertilizer in the plant.
Why do you need to keep the fertilizer and the plant together?
Well, obviously, fertilizer is in an environment with other things except just the plant and the fertilizer. So if something like water runoff comes through that plant and that fertilizer does not have a bonding agent, that fertilizer is going right with that plant into a body of water. And that has some serious environmental issues.
Can you give me an example of an environmental issue?
Yes. So as I said, that fertilizer is going with that water into various bodies of water. And if that fertilizer is in that body of water, that can cause something called eutrophication.
What exactly is eutrophication?
Eutrophication is the buildup of excessive nitrates in bodies of water. In Greek, eutrophication means grows too good. I mean, how can that be bad, right? Fertilizer's job is literally to make things grow too good. Well, in the case of eutrophication, that is algae. And that algae can cause, or that excessive growing of algae is what's referred to as algal blooms.
What are algal blooms?
As I said, they're lots just like spontaneous growing of algae, and algal blooms, like a weed in the yard that takes water. The algal blooms, the algae in the algal blooms takes oxygen from all the other things in that water, and that can obviously kill it because you need oxygen. Many organisms need oxygen to live.
Thank you. Now, does Drufo cause eutrophication?
No, Drufo actually stops eutrophication at the source.
Now, moving on, has Drufo ever faced any international difficulties?
Yes, Drufo was actually banned in the European Union.
Now, why is that?
That was because of the European Union's new nitrate directive, which stated that no new fertilizers can introduce more than.
Response?
Your Honor, Dr. Williams works with the product Drufo and his labs work with Drufo, so he would know why Drufo was banned in the European Union.
Reply?
Your Honor, no foundation has been laid for Dr. Williams to know exactly what that directive said, as well as the effects of that directive, and any testimony as would just be pure speculation.
Counsel just laid foundation for whether or not he's familiar with it, and then he can testify to it.
Dr. Williams, are you familiar with any international bans on Drufo?
Yes, I'm actually very familiar with the European Union's new nitrate directive, as Drufo was banned due to it.
Now, what is this new nitrate directive?
The nitrate directive said that no new
Objection, Your Honor.
fertilizers.
Hearsay.
I'm sorry,
Hearsay.
response?
Your Honor, he is just laying out what the nitrate directive is, not bringing in other statements.
Response, Your Honor.
Yes,
Dr. Williams expressly said this nitrate directive said, therefore he was going to go into the contents of this document, and it is an out-of-court statement being offered for the truth of the matter asserted.
reply.
Your Honor, this is not for the truth of the matter asserted. It's simply for the effect on Dr. Williams, on the listener.
Reply, Your Honor.
No. I'm going to sustain given that response. Move on.
Dr. Williams, did you conduct a study on Druffo's link to non-Hodgkin's lymphoma?
Yes, I did.
And what was the results of that study?
The study that I conducted found that there was no statistically significant increase in cases of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma with use of Drufo and other fertilizers.
What do you mean by statistically significant?
Well, if you take a large group of people, I mean any large group of people, that can be users of Drufo, that can be people who drink Coca-Cola, that can be people who live in Colorado. Some of them will develop non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. That's just a fact for any large group of people. Now, if you're doing a study perhaps on Coca-Cola and you want to see if that is caused by non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, or excuse me, Coca-Cola is the cause, in our case, Drufo is the cause, you use statistical formulas to assess that probability. And that's what I mean by statistically significant.
Thank you. Now, Dr. Williams, did your lab use this form of statistics in your study?
Yes, we did.
And are you familiar with any other studies regarding the Druffo's link to non-Hodgkin's lymphoma?
Yes, I'm actually familiar with Dr. Rogers' study.
Have you taken any particular issue with this study?
I do. For one, it was not peer reviewed. It has not been replicated. And as you heard Dr. Rogers say today, it's not even finished. In addition to that, his study is fundamentally flawed.
What do you mean by it was fundamentally flawed?
Well, his study looked at three groups of people, as you heard. Those who don't use Drufo, those who use Drufo somewhat often, that's like people who garden on the weekends, and those who use Drufo on a daily basis. Now, that may seem like a good study on just if you're just looking at the basis of it, but it's not, because Dr. Rogers did not isolate Drufo in his study. And it's just effectively, it's just looking at those who don't use fertilizer, those who use fertilizer often, and those who use fertilizer on a daily basis, which again, is pretty much just saying those who do not work in agriculture.
Hold on a sec. Go ahead.
Objection, Your Honor. Narrative.
Response.
Your Honor, he is simply stating his issues with Dr. Rogers' study and explaining how it is flawed.
Overruled. You may finish his answer.
Well, just that there is a lot of issues with this study, so I understand. Well, I was saying if you just look at fertilizers, that's effectively looking at those who don't work in agriculture, those who use agriculture somewhat often, and those who work in agriculture on a daily basis. And you can't do that. That's not a fair comparison.
Thank you. Now, why is that not a fair comparison?
Well, it's not a fair comparison because you're not isolating Drufo. His study pretty much only found, if it found anything, that somewhere in a large array of agriculture environmental factors, that's plant food, that's pesticides, that's the water that people in agriculture drink. Maybe that's different from the city. I don't know. But any of those environmental factors are causing that non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. And it did not at all isolate Drufo.
Now, Dr. Williams, do you have an expert opinion in this case?
Yes.
What is that opinion?
Mr. Weirs' cancer was not caused by Drufo.
How do you know that?
I know that because there have been, well, I'll just start with this. We don't even have a complete list of the environmental factors, the chemicals nonetheless, that Mr. Weirs was using when he was working with plants. We don't have the entire list. And even if we did, it would be effectively impossible to pinpoint that because it's very hard to do that. And well, I don't have an expertise in many products except Drufo because obviously I work with Drufo on a daily basis. But I do have an expertise with Drufo, and I can tell you very, very confidently that Drufo does not cause non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. Nonetheless, Drufo did not cause Mr. Weirs' non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
how do you know that it did not cause this cancer?
There have been no credible
Your Honor.
studies.
What is your objection?
Asked and answered.
Sustain. Move on.
Dr. Williams, do you know if there are any studies that show Drufo to be carcinogenic?
Yes, as I said, Dr. Rogers' study, but his study is not
Your
valid.
Honor.
What is your objection?
Asked and answered once again.
You may finish that answer.
As I said, I looked at Dr. Rogers' study. I looked at it very deeply, and I found that his study is just not credible. It didn't show Drufo. It didn't show a link between Drufo. It's not been peer reviewed. It's not been replicated, and it's not even finished.
Thank you. No further questions.
Thank you, counsel. Any cross-examination?
Yes, Your Honor.
Whenever you're ready, counsel.
Dr. Williams, you are the outgoing ethics committee chair of Lush Fertilizer.
Yes, I am.
So that means that it was your job to place customer safety first. Is that right?
Well, as the chair of the committee, that just means I'm in charge of the meetings. There's several other people on the committee, but as a person on the committee, yes, it was my job to weigh the ethics of the company, yes, but not solely my job.
Now, in your statement, you take time to discredit Dr. Rogers. Isn't that right?
Yes, his study was flawed.
That's right.
He's made a career out of it.
You discredit Dr. Rogers, someone whose entire career is based on finding the harmful effects of chemicals to the human body. Isn't that right?
Yes, if you look at his list of publications, that's all he does.
Yes. He focuses on the safety of people. Isn't that right?
Yes.
Now, also, you believe that when someone finds what they set out to find, one should always question their results. Isn't that right?
Yes, I believe I had a professor at CSU who said that.
That's right. Now, you are also leading a lab that is focused on overcoming the ban in the EU to sell Drufo. Isn't that right?
Yes, that is one study that my lab is currently conducting.
Yes, and you believe that this study will provide results to overcome the ban and create more customers for Lush Fertilizer. Isn't that right?
Well, as it is my hypothesis that yes, they will overcome the ban. Yes.
And you expect that it will. Isn't that right?
As I just answered, yes.
Now, it is your belief that Drufo does not cause cancer, or it does not cause a statistically significant increase in cancer. Isn't that right?
Yes.
Right. Now, you believe this because you claim that Drufo is far better for the environment than regular fertilizers. Isn't that right?
That's not the reason I believe that it doesn't cause cancer. The reason I believe it doesn't cause cancer is because the study that my lab and I conducted showed it did not cause cancer.
That's right. Your study did conduct a lab that took users of Drufo and compared them to users of the old generation fertilizers, right?
Of the other fertilizers, not necessarily the old generation.
But other leading brands?
Yes.
Yes, and all of that data was consistent with users of Drufo not having an elevated risk of developing cancer as compared to the other fertilizers. Isn't that right?
Yes.
Now, it's true, though, that Drufo, you believe one of the many benefits of Drufo is that less fertilizer needs to be sprayed than the other fertilizers to reach the exact same effect. Isn't that right?
Yes.
So users of Drufo have no elevated risk of developing cancer as compared to users who are exposed to the old generation of fertilizers way more frequently than users exposed to Drufo. Isn't that right?
Well, people who work with fertilizer, they work with fertilizer.
Dr. Williams, you can go into your answer on redirect. I'm simply asking if users of Drufo have no elevated risk of developing cancer as compared to users of other fertilizers, which have to be used way more frequently. And your answer is yes, right?
It is not in my statement whether they have to use it more frequently than the others. Maybe everyone is working with fertilizer every day. That is not my statement. Would you like me to answer that?
It's your testimony here today that users of the old generation of fertilizers don't have to use it way more frequently than other fertilizers?
It is not my statement that my study looked at those who use Drufo often or somewhat often versus those who use other fertilizers very often. I believe that is what you're trying
No,
to.
that wasn't my question. My question was that your study compared users of Drufo to users of other fertilizers, which have to be used way more frequently than Drufo.
Yes,
And
it did
your
find that
answer
there
is
was no
yes. Is that
increase.
right?
Yes, my answer is in fact yes.
Yes. And you do believe that there is no statistically significant increase in the development of cancer when exposed to Drufo, isn't that right?
Yes, that is what I said as a few
Yet
questions ago. in
nowhere
fact.
in your statement do you include your error rate for what is and is not statistically significant, isn't that right?
It is not in my statement, no.
No, so we have no way of knowing the proportion of your data that was incorrect, do we?
None of my data is incorrect.
But Dr. Williams, you didn't include your error rate. So we have absolutely no idea what portion of your data was incorrect, if any, because you did not include it.
Yes,
Isn't that
it is
right?
not in my statement. Yes.
But of course, you believe Drufo does not cause cancer, which is fortunate for Lush. Isn't that right?
Well, I think it's fortunate for everyone. If you're using a product that doesn't cause cancer, you're not going to get cancer, and that's a good
Dr.
thing.
Williams, when stating your conclusions, you state that it is fortunate for Lush, for its stockholders, and for the planet that Drufo does not cause non-Hodgkin lymphoma. Isn't that right?
Yes, it's fortunate for the planet environmentally and everyone on the planet.
And you stated that it was fortunate for Lush, for its stockholders, and for the planet in that exact order. Isn't that right?
I believe so, yes.
And in fact, you're sad that the jury will not be able to weigh the benefits of the planet of this product. Isn't that right?
Yes, I do. I think the environmental benefits of Drufo are very, very big.
That's right. Simply that they will have to look at whether it causes non-Hodgkin lymphoma in a vacuum. Isn't that right?
Yes.
Its effect on people. Isn't that right?
Yes.
Which was your job. Isn't that right?
Sorry, what was my job?
To look at the effects of Drufo on people.
Yes,
to look
that
at
is
any
what
chemical
I'm.
you reviewed on people.
Mainly, my job is to look at the environmental benefits of Drufo, as I said. But yes,
Dr.
it is
Williams.
part of my job to look at the effects on people. Yes.
Yes. Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
Thank you, counsel. Any redirect?
No, Your Honor.
Thank you. Doctor, you can step down. Thank you very much. Does the defense have any other witnesses they wish to call at this time?
No, Your Honor, the defense rests.
Thank you. Does the plaintiff wish to provide a closing argument at this time?
Yes, Your Honor. At this time, I would like to request any time I have left remaining be used for rebuttal.
It may. Whenever you're ready, counsel.
Green lawns plus greenwashing equals greenbacks. Dakota Weirs is stumbling towards the piano. He's hoping for the music of his childhood to break his everyday pain. His hands desperately reach for the keys, but his arms, they don't leave his side. The silence stretches on while he sits, trapped in his shell of a body, devastated with the knowledge that his life's joy is gone. Good afternoon, Your Honor, counsel, members of the jury. My name is Moira Newman, and together with Feliciana Sayers and Arapahoe, we have the privilege of representing Mr. Dakota Weirs, the plaintiff in today's trial. Our burden, prove Lush was negligent, and its negligence damaged Dakota Weirs. We have met our burden. At the beginning of this trial, Ms. Sayers asked you to think about 3 questions. 1, did Lush do enough to warn and protect its customers? No. Carson Durst told you about how she told the company about her concerns regarding Drufo. Response? More studies to reach better conclusions, but better for Lush. Dr. Williams, the ethics director, placed environmentalist gimmicks over the true and legitimate safety of his customers. Doncourt, the humanitarian and environmental savior, no warnings, no baking, more money, greenbacks. 2, hold a 14-year-old boy responsible for his own safety. He can't even choose his own bedtime, but the defense expects him to have the maturity to be able to act in his own best self-interest when everyone was doing the exact opposite. Grown adults couldn't even wear a mask when they were told to. But oh, sorry about your cancer, Mr. Weirs. You should have been wearing a mask. And finally, 3, Drufo, safe. Now, Drufo creates green lawns, and the defense would like you to believe that it's better for the environment with no elevated risk of developing cancer, greenwashing. However, Dr. Rogers, his study proved that being exposed to Drufo once is just like being exposed to arsenic 10 times. Members of the jury, Drufo was designed to kill. Pests and weeds, sure, but a killer is a killer, nonetheless. Green lawns is greenwashing equals greenbacks. We are not claiming economic damages here today, but Mr. Weirs has suffered. He is suffering great pain, and he has lost the quality of life he would have had. It is up to you to put a value on that loss, that pain. $5 million is certainly not an unreasonable amount. Find Lush Fertilizer liable and award Dakota Weirs at least $5 million. Thank you. Judge, you're muted.
I tried to mute so I wouldn't interrupt you. Does the defense wish to provide a closing argument at this time?
Yes, Your Honor, we do.
Whenever you're ready.
The first answer isn't always the right one. When Dakota Weirs was diagnosed with his non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, he quickly found himself in a world of hurt and confusion. Looking for something to turn to, he found answers in the form of the first story he saw on TV, which happened to be about Lush Fertilizer. But ladies and gentlemen of the jury, as you have seen here today, the first answer was wrong. The plaintiff says that a killer is a killer nonetheless. And yet they are still actively choosing money over pursuing this actual killer, the actual product that caused Dakota's cancer. The plaintiff's stance that Drufo causes cancer could not be further from the truth. Their main support comes from one study run by Dr. Casey Rogers, a man who did not decide to include whether or not participants worked with other products. This study wasn't Drufo specific. The plaintiff had to show you today that Drufo was the cause of Dakota's cancer. But as Dr. Williams highlighted, what they have actually done is shown that other products may cause cancer. What we do know is what's right in front of us. We know that throughout the entirety of his career with Lush, Blake Doncourt has made safety the #1 priority. Every single decision he made was based on the findings of his safety studies. Lush was a safer product than other fertilizers because of its fewer applications. Lush followed the science. When you heard comments from Carson Durst here today claiming the opposite, I'd like to remind you that she currently works for Lush's leading competitor, but even before that, she wasn't at all the meetings. She didn't have all the information. What she does have is a strong personal and professional bias against Lush. It is undeniable that what Dakota Weirs is going through is a tragedy that should not be taken lightly. However, that isn't the question of today's trial. This is a case about causation and negligence. The plaintiff has the burden of proof here today, which means that they had to prove 4 separate things to you, not just one, all 4. Now, we as the defense, we don't dispute claims 1 and 3. So to narrow it down, let's start with where they failed, starting with claim 2. The plaintiff argues that Lush failed to prevent an unreasonable risk of harm for reasonable users of their product. We know that isn't true because there was no unreasonable risk of harm. Lush ran extensive studies. The EPA ran extensive studies. And guess what they both found? That's right, nothing, no cancer. It's true that what Dakota is facing should be acknowledged, but to hear the plaintiff ask for damages today, you would have to, even if you found Drufo contributed, you would have to narrow down these damages for his own negligence. You heard Dakota Weirs explain how he didn't use the product reasonably, which brings us into our second claim. That while being used in a reasonable manner, Lush's product caused the plaintiff's injuries. We know neither part of that is true. We know from the science studies that Drufo doesn't cause cancer, and we know from Dakota Weirs himself that he didn't use the product reasonably, that he routinely disregarded all precautions. He didn't wear the required long sleeve shirt. He didn't wear the required pants. He didn't wear gloves. He didn't wear a proper face mask when working with these chemicals. Dakota Weirs threw caution to the wind. And that is precisely why we ask you, members of the jury, to deliver a judgment for the defense, because the first answer was wrong. Thank you.
May I proceed? You're still muted.
Try to be nice, and that's what happens. Do you wish to provide a rebuttal?
Yes, Your Honor.
Whenever you're ready.
Now, the defense would like you to believe that the first answer isn't always the right answer, but the one backed by science and not bias or prejudice. That is the right answer. Now, Lush didn't like the first answer their research gave them. So to them, that answer wasn't right. But members of the jury, from all the testimony you've heard today, Lush fertilizer caused the cancer in today's trial. This company has created a balancing act between environmentalist gimmicks and true and legitimate customer safety, and they should be held responsible for the collateral damage it causes. How many more people have to get non-Hodgkin lymphoma for us to hold this company liable? Are we not going to compensate this man for the loss of his career and livelihood? Find Lush Fertilizer liable. Award some of those greenbacks back to the person Lush failed to protect. And award Dakota Weirs at least $5 million. Thank you.
Thank you, counsel. Thank you all. Good job. The scoring panelists, just pop on once you've got your scores tallied and sent, and then we'll go through any comments you have to make. Have any of you folks, either the plaintiff or the defense, done this live? None of you? Nobody ever done it live?
Some of our team has.
We have, Your Honor.
What do you think about the difference?
It's a lot more difficult.
Anybody else done it live?
I have, yeah. It is definitely a different experience, that's for sure.
You looking forward to going back to live?
Absolutely.
Next year. All right, Ms. Ives, have you finished?
I have, thank you, Your Honor.
Or Mr. Gruskin, are you finished? All right, and Mr. Johnson? All right, Ms. Ives, did you have anything you wish to say?
Well, I would like to congratulate both teams. I think you did a fantastic job today. I'd like to start by saying the witnesses were so prepared compared to other groups that I have seen present. So just wholeheartedly, I would tell the witnesses, excellent job. I know most of the comments always go to the attorneys because we're attorneys. We like to talk about attorneys, but the witnesses did great. I also was very impressed with the attorneys. I think you guys did a good job of listening to the answer and then trying to turn it back around. I think some of the witnesses made it very difficult for you because they had their stories down and they were sticking to them. But I think you did a good job trying on cross-examination to break some of those. I'm kind of blown away with how well both of these teams did. So I hope you both make it to state. I have no idea how that gets decided, but you both deserve it. So really well done. And I hope a bunch of you become lawyers.
Don't do that.
Be good for our profession.
Mr. Gruskin?
I too would like to congratulate both groups, and as someone who's coached mock trial for a lot of years, but I'm not coaching any team this year. I know what it's like to be on the receiving end of these comments where you get kind of general platitudes and whatever, and you're at the fourth round, you don't need a lot of specifics. But I want to commend the witnesses in particular for both knowing your facts, being flexible with your testimony, clearly working with your attorneys to get prepared for tough cross-exams. And not one of you wilted during cross-exam. And there were some tough cross-exams given. The experts, and it's hard to be an expert in some of these cases, I get that, but the experts found a way to be appropriately dedicated to their testimony without looking like they were rooting for the side from which they were testifying. And the character witnesses, I think, played just enough of whatever sort of investment they would have, whether it was personal, familial, or corporate, that it came off as being extraordinarily credible. And to the lawyers, let me just say, I know the cross-exam is the most, pretty much the most fun that you can have in a courtroom, but what you focused on and emphasized and succeeded at was the direct exam, which is figuring out how to allow your witnesses to tell their story, and you escorted them through that and protected them well from objections, such that not one of you who was doing a direct exam had a witness that got diverted from what they needed or wanted to say. So kudos to you. Nicely done on both sides of the table.
Thank you. Mr. Johnson?
So I'll echo, you all did a wonderful job. This was a fantastic round. It was a pleasure to watch. I am going to make an attempt to just make very minor comments just to recognize some things I thought were really positive that, quite frankly, all of you did at one point or another. And I'm going to run through kind of how, as I have them in my notes, and if I screw up names, I want to apologize in advance. Just starting at the top, Feliciana, you were very expressive in the opening, and it was really great. And then another thing you did later on that I thought was really smart, even though you know you're not going to win in mock trial on disqualifying the expert, was you did a really quick, you don't know anything, you don't have any education, and it really set a nice groundwork for why should we even be talking to this person. Zach, also great delivery on the opening. And then when you were doing the expert direct, you did a great job of just letting him go. You walked through in a very easy way of giving the expert as much room as he needed to talk about whatever he wanted, which is what you want the expert to kind of explain everything. Moira, that closing was incredibly passionate. It was really great. And similarly, you had a very methodical approach to your expert, which gave them a great opportunity to explain what they were going to talk about. Macklin, you did a great job as a witness, kind of explaining why you'd want to testify, and it's not about financial bias. And I thought that was really smart, because there is that opportunity there, and you explained, no, I want to protect people. Emma, really nice job pointing out when you're doing your cross, I think, pointing out you can't tell in your study everything that people were exposed to or how often they were exposed to, and just kind of undermining the point that was being made there. Abbott, you were citing rule numbers on hearsay objections, and it was really fantastic. Just 801 subsection to you really showed a great knowledge of the rules, and it came up a couple times. Taylor, you did a great job as the witness, talking about the performance reviews where they were just retaliatory because I wasn't giving them the answers they wanted, and I thought it was well done and a great point. And you kept coming back to that even though you kept being challenged on it. Jordan, you did a great job of putting emotion into your presentation, and that is hard as a witness. But you came across as you were deeply affected by what has happened as Dakota Weirs. And that was really nice to see, because that can be a challenge in some other presentations that I've seen of witnesses who have similar kind of sympathetic backstories. Caroline, when you were doing direct with the CEO, you did something, I think it was intentional, and if it wasn't, I'm still going to say it was intentional, you asked, why are you on trial here today? And I thought that was a really nice way of trying to personalize it. It's not about corporate giant versus corporate giant. We're all people here. Because it's really easy for the other side to be, we're up against this corporate behemoth, and trying to make it more personal and make all those awards and accolades count was, I thought, a good strategic choice. And Aiden, you did a great job of being personable. You weren't the CEO I wanted to hate. You sounded like a decent person, and that you cared, and you've done all these great things. And again, that can be a challenge in that role, right? Is you, if you take the statement and go in a different direction, I'm going to hate you. But you avoided that. Sebastian, you had this great, really succinct statement. Drufa didn't cause my brother's non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. Just got the point out really clearly, really succinctly. There was no question about what you were thinking, and that was very helpful in making the point strongly for your team. And then Oliver, as the expert, great job talking directly to camera in a way that was engaging and explaining concepts well. Really nice job as the witness, and as a witness you'd want as your expert.
Thank you. Normally in the fourth round, I don't usually say anything but good job. But I truly believe after 10 years of doing this, that at least one, if not both of you teams will probably be competing at the next level. And so I'm going to give you some food for thought, because it gets harder. It gets a lot harder because only the best teams move on. And that's why I'm going to just kind of give you a couple things. There is a reason that openings are called opening statements and closings are called closing arguments. An opening statement is to just give a brief overview of the facts of the case, and a closing argument is to argue your points. Understand that difference, because there is a difference between the two. Most attorneys honestly do not understand that difference. So that's something that's a pet peeve of mine, I guess. I noticed there were a lot of witnesses that kind of ate your time up, and they're just talking and you're like, oh, and you want the judge to jump in and stop them, right? But the judge is never going to do that. You can object when you're on cross to the witness you're crossing. You can still object and say objection non-responsive, and get that judge to say, yes, witness, please stick to the answer. So if somebody's really just kind of blah, 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 just stop them and show that you understand that they can't do that. And that's a good objection. So you can do that even when you're the one asking the questions. Make sure you listen to the answers. I think on the cross of Dottencourt, or whatever his name is, he gave you 7%, and then you argued, no, 6%. He gave you 7%. So take that. So it wasn't 6, it was 7 that you made profit in. Listen to the answer, because sometimes he'll give you a gift and you can go with it. Don't get lost in your scripts. And he gave you a gift and you should have eaten him up with that. So remember that. And experts can testify to hearsay if they're testifying to a study they relied upon to get their testimony. So don't worry about that hearsay objection. You just have to make the right response, which is, this is an expert and he relied upon that for his testimony or for his expert opinion. So that's okay. Experts get away with a lot more stuff once you're qualified as experts. So remember that. But you guys use that stuff in your next rounds, because I bet money that at least one of you, if not both of you, are going to be going on. And I'm very impressed, especially on the videos. You guys did really well, and that's hard. That's really hard. So congratulations. Go home and celebrate, but not too much, and have a great weekend.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Franco.
Thank you.
Great job. Good luck.
Did the monitor get all the responses? I mean, all the scoring?
It says they were accepted, so I'm going with yes.
You guys all got accepted. Monitor, are we good to go? I guess we are. Thank you, guys. I appreciate it. All your comments were amazing. Thanks.
Nice meeting you all.
Have a good day.
Bye.